Alright, today we're going to go over the Declaration of Independence. I've pulled up a transcript on my other computer because this video program won't let me share it here. So, let me start at the beginning. It says, the Declaration of Independence, a transcript. And again, we're going to be seeing if any of this applies to today's government and the acts of the Supreme Court, etc. In Congress, July 4, 1776, a unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which was actually property, but Franklin had him change it to happiness, a little tidbit there. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patience suffered of these colonies, I think we could say states at this point, and is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former system of government. The history of the present, it says the King of Great Britain, but I'm going to substitute it here for King Obama, and the Congress and the Supreme Court of the federal government, has a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. Well, let's see. The Supreme Court just recently invalidated the state constitutions of several states by saying they will recognize gay marriage or else. I don't remember seeing that in the Constitution where a Supreme Court could order something to become legal without a legislature having given it this said authority, and since neither Congress nor the states gave it that authority, I would have to say that ruling, among several others, is illegal, and that the justices should probably be, at the very least, kicked out of office. Next point. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. Well, this could be also included as to when Texas wanted to put militia and National Guard on the border to protect their state sovereignty and or national sovereignty, because both Bush and Obama didn't want to do it because it was politically not in their best interest, because they're trying to get illegals to vote for them. So both the states of, I believe it was Arizona and Texas, passed laws that said they were going to arrest illegals and force their deportation. To which the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that because that would violate the ability of the federal government to negotiate treaties. Now, For the next point, he has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and forbiddable to tyrants only. Well, I think that's safe to say that the previous point of him refusing and voiding laws in Texas and Arizona, and along with several other states, that would fall under there. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. Well, I think making people from California travel to D.C. to prove a case, or from Texas, Arizona, and Utah, that's about a 2,000-mile drive to D.C. I mean, granted, we have airplanes now. It's only about 6 hours on an airplane. But honestly, it's away from their public records. It's a great distance. So there, we got that one covered. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasion on the rights of the people. Well, I don't think he's done that one yet. I haven't seen him depose any of the state legislatures or the Congress yet. He has openly gone around them and has determined what he thought was law because he, quote, had a pen and a phone. How wonderful. Maybe we should remove those from the Oval Office for him. Let's see the next one, as this is quite a list we have going here. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions from within. Well, I guess we could use Texas and Arizona again on this one, since he voided the law but refused to do anything with the border, and the border's still a leaking pipe that needs plugged. That's not going to happen anytime soon. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. Well, that was pretty much because of the line of demarcation that they passed back in the 1750s and 60s, I believe, where basically it was a deal with the Indian tribes. They wouldn't settle any further west. That doesn't really apply here unless you want to bring up like the Clive and Bundy thing, where the federal government just openly puts ground up and says you're not allowed to use it, even though you've been using it for hundreds of years. And yes, I count it as hundreds of years if your great-grandfather farmed the daggone land. So, let's go to the next one. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. Well, I don't think that one's been covered. I might be wrong, but I mean, there's several here that don't apply to today. Obviously, they apply to kings and not to presidents, even though we have a president that thinks he's a king. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. Again, that's something that a king could do. Congress still has that authority, even though Congress does not seem to ever want to exercise their authority in impeaching judges. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their subsistence. Well, let's think here. Bureau of Land Management, FBI, DEA, let's see, ATFE, ring a bell? The Justice Department altogether? Okay, next one. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislature. Well, this one's not necessarily done for Mr. Obama. This one's been done since Mr. Lincoln, but it does apply. The only difference is they haven't forced us to board them in our homes and feed them yet, but that is what your tax money's used for at the moment. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He would like to. He hasn't officially done that to my knowledge as of yet. At least not that I've seen. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened, just I haven't seen it. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and acknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. Let's see. TPP would be done here. Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement. Let's see. NAFTA. All these have separate court systems that exist outside the United States in great violation of the U.S. Constitution, who says only the Supreme Court shall be the Supreme Court, obviously. That's why it's Supreme. But it's supposed to be the only one that rules over international affairs for the United States. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us. They're not technically among us. They are in their own military bases. However, like I said earlier, you are paying for this large, massive army with your tax dollars. You might not be feeling the pinch now, but you will eventually feel the pinch as obviously the debt gets larger and larger, and it's already unsustainable as it is. Don't be fooled there. We're headed for economic collapse. For protecting them by a mock trial from punishments of any murder which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states. That's, again, going back to the military. As to my knowledge, that hasn't happened yet. Mr. Obama seems pretty quick to throw the military under the bus, so we'll skip that one for now. For cutting off our trade with all parts of the world. He hadn't done that one. I'll give him credit for that. He just made it so that we'll go bankrupt because all our manufacturing is going overseas. You know what I mean? If you can make an item in Vietnam for 50 cents a week, and that same item in the U.S. costs you, I don't know, $5,000 a week, it's a lot cheaper to send it on a boat. For imposing taxes on us without our consent. You could include Obamacare in this because it is a tax. Roberts got that one all wrong, but obviously Roberts doesn't get a whole lot right anymore. For depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. Well, we still have jury. Well, unless you're ranked as a terrorist and sent to Guantanamo, and then you have a military tribunal and you also disappear, and you may never see your family again. So I guess that one would apply, but that would apply clear back to Bush, too. So, moving along. For transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. Well, we go back to the terrorist charge. If you are labeled as a terrorist, they will send you to Gitmo, which is over a sea. They will hold you indefinitely. When they finally get tired of looking at you, they'll hold a mock trial, and they'll throw away the key. And because you're not in the U.S., you don't have any constitutional rights. Thank you, the Patriot Act. So, now, for the next one, we go to, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies. That one doesn't apply to us, I don't believe. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. Now, let me think. What was it Obama said? I'm going to fundamentally change the U.S.? I think he's done a pretty good job of that one. For suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. They haven't officially suspended our own legislatures. What they have done is said our legislatures can't rule in this manner. They can't do this. They can't do that. Basically, they're just another taxing agency because they're not allowed to do anything but repair roads, and we all see how well they do that. If we're invaded, your state is not going to protect you anymore. The state police here where I'm at is only about, there might be 1,000 of them tops. I'd have to actually look at the stats. But they can barely enforce the speeding laws. I don't really see them enforcing stopping a military invasion. That's pretty much left up to the unorganized militia in Pennsylvania, which is very unorganized. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. Well, other than political and tax laws, he hasn't actually marched troops yet. Of course, Jade Helm is set to start up here soon, and we'll all be watching. I'm not a fan of martial law, as you get the hint. In fact, I'd rather oppose martial law. But I think it is coming. Let's see. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. Well, economically, he's done a pretty good job at that. I mean, he hasn't literally burned towns to the ground, but him and Congress have made the money worthless. They refuse to actually rein in the deficit or the debt. So it's only a matter of time before the people burn their own cities and ravage their own countryside. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He's, like I said, they're doing Jade Helm, but as of today, June 27th, or no, I'm off a few days. Monday, June 29th at 040. He hasn't yet marched troops in here to complete their act of tyranny. They did a pretty good job overseas, though, so it would be nothing for them to do it over here. I have faith that the military won't let them get away with it, but I mean, that faith only goes so far. As far as the military goes, actions speak louder than words, guys. It might be time for you to actually start looking at the command you're being handed down. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. That one they haven't done to my knowledge, but I believe that was dealing with privacy and mercenaries. He has excited domestic insurrections among us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. Well, the Indian savages, they're not really savages anymore. The Indians are very peaceful people at the moment. I believe we could imply ISIS in there. He's brought the terrorists home. No doubt about that. Between Bush's war and Obama's wars, he's incited insurrections above us. Let me think. Baltimore, Ferguson. Let's see. He's trying in South Carolina and Charleston. Those people seem to have a little more common sense, but he is trying to incite insurrection there. Doing a pretty good job of stirring trouble up. Okay, now let's see. We're done with that. So now we're at the tail end of this. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant, or we could put president in there. It doesn't have to be limited to a prince. Is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. I think it is very clear at this point that Congress and the federal government in general has overstepped their charter and has decided that they wish to be tyrants more than they wish to be our servants to rule in our behalf. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They, too, have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must, therefore, acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connections between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honors. America, it's about time we all wake up here. Things are not going to get any better. They're only going to get worse. Tyrants only go one way. We are fixing to see purges like they saw in Germany in 1930s and like they saw in Russia when Stalin took over. If you are not prepared, you had better get prepared. The time to act is coming. We may not want to act. We might not want to be violent, which I don't recommend being violent, but the time is coming when we may have to be. And the time to prepare is growing very short. So with that, my friends and fellow patriots, I wish you all well. I hope this isn't prophecy that the end is near, but I feel it is. My gut's telling me it is. Get ready. Stand at the ready. Don't let them back. Don't back down. Stand up for what you believe. A man that doesn't stand for anything will fall for anything. So, like I said, stand up. Be strong. They can't defeat us if we stand together. Have a nice day, guys.